Good morning. Welcome to our thought for the day for Wednesday the 22nd of April. Our reading this morning is taken from Exodus 16, starting at the 10th verse. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked towards the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I've heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening, quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It's the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who had gathered much did not have too much, and the one who had gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning as Moses has commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day and gathered it, but found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. There are so many wonderful things going on in this passage that I'd love to talk about, but I'll try and restrict myself because it's only meant to be a short thought for the day and not a whole long discourse. Back in verse 10, while Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked back towards the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in a cloud. This must have been an amazing sight. They had all seen it. I would love to have seen it, and wouldn't you have loved to have seen the glory of the Lord? The Israelites had recently been liberated from slavery in Egypt and crossed the sea on dry land. And yet they're worried about starving in the desert because they cannot yet see where their food will come from. So already they're grumbling, and God has heard them grumbling. But in response, God graciously promises to feed them, not just bread and meat, but quails and manna. He promises to feed them 6 days a week and allow 1 day for a Sabbath rest. This is the first Sabbath recorded after God rested from making the world and people and animals. This is also all taking place before they were given the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai a few chapters later in their journey. When they were slaves in Egypt, they had no days of respite from their labors. But here they were to gather each day for 6 days and then rest on the seventh. So they're all learning this new rhythm to rest 1 day in 7, just as God did after his act of creation. The Israelites' time in the desert was proving a crucible for their formation. They were learning to trust God and obey his decrees. But they seemed to be slow learners. They had not learned to trust as they passed through the desert of Shur. They grumble about the lack of water, just as I might have done in the desert. They grumbled rather than prayed. They were led and found water at Marah, and then again at Elim, where there were 12 springs of water. Then they grumbled about the lack of food. But they were meant to be trusting God for water and for food. But this new food is strange to them, especially the manna. The word that they used for manna equates to, "What is it?" That's not a normal response of someone who's grateful and trusting God. They were not grateful. They even had to learn the hard way to try not to gather food on the Sabbath because it was not there. This daily provision of food was meant to put them into a reliance upon God. Whether they collected a little or a lot, they had enough. When they tried to collect extra for a following day, it went rotten. I suppose you can hardly blame them. The desert's a tough place. But amazingly also that the food didn't go rotten on Saturday. Further, if they failed to prepare for the Sabbath, they found nothing arrived that day. Here the Sabbath seems to enter the story as another crazy divine expectation. Would you risk not having enough to live on by doing nothing 1 day in 7? It didn't make economic sense. But maybe that is the point of the story. The sense in life and in here is in trusting God that things will work out if we do what God commands. Our ancestors all followed the guidance of the cloudy column, and they went through the Red Sea as a kind of baptism. They all drank the water and then all ate the food, but most of them fell in the wilderness. These stories are all recorded for us to learn from them. Have we learned to listen to God and to trust him? Have we learned to obey him? Are we being grateful for the blessings we have, even in these hard times? How are we all responding to God? May you all have a blessed day as you seek to follow him.